We've had very good price recovery coming through since the beginning of last year. We've had good volume recovery coming through since the second half of 2009. So we now are in a very good position where the fundamentals are highly attractive and that we've had supply side reduction during the crisis and demand side recovery post-crisis. And this is why we've had good profitability in the first quarter. It's come through well. There are some issues to watch out for. There's some cost pressures that are lingering out there, and they're real. The weakness of the dollar will cause trade flows, which will have some pricing impacts, no doubt. But generally, one has to say that the fundamentals are looking pretty attractive for us.
It's quite fascinating. I mean, you alluded to this with the capacity overall in the industry. Would you say that that has been dealt with, and now the paper industry is sitting with capacity that is suitable to the demand needs?
I think you need to break it down by grade. I think every grade is in a different place. The grades that we are focused on, and we are principally a packaging company, 2/3 of Mondi is packaging, and we've had rationalisation and some supply side growth during the crisis, but the demand side growth has more than compensated for that, and that sector is in good space. So the supply demand balance in corrugated packaging in Europe is very well positioned. In the industrial packaging space in Europe, which is more on the bag side of it, their demand recovery has come through rather nicely, still below pre-crisis levels within Europe, above in Eastern Europe, and above in Middle East and Asia, etc. But during the crisis, there was real supply-side contraction that took place. And as a result, that market is now undersupplied, and hence pricing recovery has been very sharp. So the packaging space is looking particularly attractive. I wouldn't say the overall industry is back in the right place. Some grades are still pretty difficult. Newsprint is a difficult place to be. Uncoated fine paper, which is our only printing and writing grade, is in reasonable shape in Europe. Our business in Europe is very Eastern Europeans focused, and Russia and South Africa. Russia's in very good shape. South Africa's in a decent place. Eastern Europe is okay. Western Europe is still a little bit, got a bit more rationalisation on the supply side would be good in Western Europe.
It sounds like quite an interesting balancing act. And most of the investors that we speak to about the paper industry with regards to Mondi and of course Sappi, they say, well, we're moving towards the technology age and there's no real need for magazines and newspapers. But you do allude to the fact that packaging is a very big part of your business. What do you say to those investors that are so negative about not only Mondi but Sappi as well?
Yeah, I think you need to break it down. It's not an easy sell, let's be honest, because the paper industry, for very good reason, doesn't have a good reputation. It hasn't delivered value well for a long time. But you need to break it down. And the fact is that if you're in the industrial packaging space and the consumer's packaging space, you're dealing with a product which is inherently in growth and is inherently required. I mean, every single consumable and most durables that you buy on the supermarket shelf come through a corrugated box somewhere in their value chain. And corrugated packaging has been proven to be economically and sustainably, from an environmental recycling point of view, about the best form of packaging you can have for those types of products. So you need to break it down. If you're a pure printing and writing company, paper company, I'd hate to be in that space. Now, we have some printing and writing exposure, as I mentioned. It's in the office paper area. It's this cut 4, this A4 stuff. The good news in this grade is that this grade continues to grow very strongly in the emerging world. Yes, it is mature in the Western world, but our main exposure is in the emerging world. South Africa, Eastern Europe and Russia is where our predominant uncoated fine paper exposure is.
Let's move into the African story. And of course, when we talk about growing consumer, one only has to look at what is happening on the continent, and that means more need for goods and therefore more need for packaging. What is your strategy going to be with regards to the continent?
Well, we have a South African packaging business that we're actually going to be separating out of Mondi. It is our biggest corrugating asset here in South Africa. The reason why we're separating it out is that it is trying to focus into a much broader remit of packaging, exactly to service this dynamic where the African market is growing. There is a growing consumer base taking place in South Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, and they are broadening beyond corrugated into rigid plastics packaging, which is another very nice packaging domain. We as a group don't want to stretch into every product area, and hence we are going to separate them and list them off separately in South Africa, and they will focus on that African opportunity, which I agree is extremely interesting.